Okay, so now we're going to be talking about the muscles of the arm. For your information, when your book talks about the scapula, it's talking about the shoulder area. You've got the girdle that holds your arm bones on, and that's the clavicle and the scapula that form that. When it says arm, it's talking about this part. When it says forearm, it's talking about this part. Your hand, you've got your first digit, second, third, fourth, fifth, and there's specific terminology that they're using that I'm going to tell you so that when you see a specific part, hopefully that'll kind of help you to learn where the muscle is going to be. So let's talk about the scapula first. So we've got the same muscles we've been talking about kind of toward the neck, the trapezius, the levator scapula. Trapezius elevates and depresses, retracts and rotates and flexes the scapula. So we've got elevation, well, I don't know if you can see it, elevation, retraction, rotation, depression, pulling it down as well. Then we've got the levator scapula. Remember, levator, elevator. So it elevates your scapula. It retracts it, so it pulls it back, and it can rotate it as well. And we talked about this with the neck. It can laterally flex your neck. And then we've got the Rhomboidus Minor and the Rhomboidus Minor and the Rhomboidus Major. They also kind of do the same in the fact that they retract. They can slightly elevate, not as much as the other two. And if you look at their location, that makes sense. They can't necessarily elevate it as highly as the other two because it's not stretched that far. It rotates and it can flex the scapula as well. The major, okay, at the bottom, the Rhomboidus Major, retracts, rotates, and flexes, okay? So you've got slight differences between the major and the minor. Now, looking here, again, we've got parts that are bone or are tendons, so don't worry about those, like the coracoid process on your scapula, don't worry about that. Yeah. And the muscles that aren't specific to the arm, I'm not going to go through them right now, okay, or specific to the scapula. So the subclavius, if you look, here's my clavicle and it's right below it. So subclavius makes sense, okay? It actually holds that clavicle in place, and it lifts the first rib slightly. It elevates that first rib slightly. The Pectoralis Minor, okay, which is actually cut here, but where are you? I thought I had a better picture of that. Maybe I don't. I'll see if I can get a better picture and I'll put it right after this one. The Pectoralis Minor actually pulls down the scapula, or it can elevate the ribs. It kind of depends on what you're wanting it to do. The subscapularis, right there, which you can see is reflected right here, arm, it medially rotates your arm. So it brings your arm in like this. It will hold the head of the humerus in place if you're moving your arm around down here. So it kind of fixes this, but it also does that medial rotation, that rotation towards your middle with your arm. Now remember, this is arm, this is forearm. Okay, so we're talking about this rotating medially. Okay, the biceps brachii is an arm muscle, and it flexes the shoulder and elbow and supinates the forearm and hand. So it flexes, okay, the shoulder. And remember, pronation was face down, supination was face up. So pronation is palm down, supination is palm up. Okay, so when we say it supinates the forearm, it turns it this way so that your palm is facing up. And that does change what's happening in your forearm as well as the position of your hand. Okay, let's see. The latissimus dorsi does affect your arm. It adducts and medially rotates your arm and can extend your shoulder. So adduction is bringing in toward the middle, and medial rotation, which we just talked about, and then extending the shoulder. Flexing the shoulder is forward, extending is back, so it does this motion, okay? That's the latissimus dorsi and how it affects your arm. The serratus anterior does affect your scapula. It rotates it and protracts it, so it pulls it back when it comes to your scapula specifically. The pectoralis major, which has been cut, but you can see in other pictures, I think we're going to see it in a couple more. The pectoralis major actually flexes your shoulder. It adducts and medially rotates the arm. It extends the shoulder as well from a flex position. So a lot of these, I said this in the last video, a lot of these are doing the same motion. And we talked about in lecture, we talked about the fact that you've got the synergists that are basically doing the same motion, all working together to do the same motion, but one of them does the majority of the work. So don't forget that. Even though a lot of these do the same thing, not that you need to know it for the practical, but even though a lot of these do the same thing, it's not isolated. Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense. Okay. My Lord, I am blind. Remember I said the pectoralis minor, there was a better picture? Here's the pectoralis minor, guys. Sorry. Okay, so there are 7 parts to the rotator cuff. C-U-F-F, cuff, not cuffed. I've heard people say that. There is no T in this. But here are 2 of the muscles in that specific area, okay? So the subscapularis, we just went over a minute ago, over here. But the Teres Major, I'm sorry, the Teres Minor, can't take me anywhere. Instead of medially rotating the arm, it laterally rotates the arm, and it can adduct, it can bring in, and it holds the head of the humerus in place as well. The Teres Major here extends the shoulder, okay, adducts and medially rotates your arm. Okay. Yeah, we talked about the pectoralis minor, the latissimus dorsi, and the external abdominal oblique already. And then we've got the serratus anterior. Remember in the last video of the torso, I said it kind of looks like a serrated edge, okay? It rotates and protracts the scapula. So it's going to kind of pull it forward, because protraction is forward, retraction is back. So you've got this kind of pulling forward of And if you look at the muscle, let me do that. If you look at the muscle, you can see it kind of pulling that in this direction, just based on its shape and where the fibers are going. Yeah, okay. So let's talk about those that are working on, again, the arm, this being the arm up here. So we've got the deltoid, which is here. There it's cut, but you can really see it right here. So, not that you want to know about my life, but I'm going to tell you anyway. I just got the pneumonia shot, the flu shot, and my tetanus shot all, let's see, about 4 days ago. And they give it to you in the deltoid because it's a very big, thick muscle. Yeah, my arms hurt, just saying. Anyway, so the deltoid, it flexes, extends the shoulder. It abducts and medially and laterally rotates the arm. So the thing about the deltoid is you actually kind of have 3 sets of muscles. You've got one kind of toward the back, you've got one in the middle, and you've got one kind of toward the front. And because you've got these 3 sets of muscles within the same muscle, the amount that it can do is actually pretty interesting. Because if you do the front section, it can flex your shoulder. If you do the back section, you can extend the shoulder. You can abduct. Again, remember, abduct is away. You can abduct the arm. And again, if you think about that muscle pulling, that makes sense. And because you've got that kind of group in front and group in back, you can rotate medially and you can rotate laterally, just depending on what part of that muscle you're using. The Coracobrachialis, right here. I don't know if it's Coraco or Coraco. It adducts the arm, it brings it toward the body, and it flexes the shoulder, okay? We talked about the biceps brachii. The abdominal aponeurosis is actually the tendon, so don't worry about that. We've talked about the pectoralis major that's right there that isn't actually cut. You can actually see it there. There's the serratus anterior that we've talked about, and there's the deltoid that isn't cut like what you see on the left side of the screen. Okay, so here are some of the deeper muscles. We've talked about the levator scapula. We've talked about the rhomboidus minor and major. There's that rotator cuff, okay? You've got the supraspinatus, the infraspinatus, subscapularis, and the teres minor. So the supraspinatus abducts the arm. It brings it out, okay? And it holds the head of the humerus in place. The infraspinatus laterally rotates the arm, so it's rotating it out toward the side, and it holds the head of the humerus in place. We've talked about the teres major, the latissimus dorsi. Don't worry about that because it's a vertebra. And the external abdominal oblique we talked about when we talked about the thorax. Everything that's here we've already mentioned. So don't think it's new. It's just a new view. It's just new what you're seeing. Okay? Okay, so forearm. This part of your arm down here next to your hand. Arm, forearm. So quite a few of these we've already mentioned, even though some of them are cut. We've cut the serratus anterior, but we've talked about it. The Coracobrachialis, the Biceps Brachii, the Teres Major. Again, don't need to know that because it's a tendon of the Latissimus Dorsi. Now, the Triceps Brachii. The Triceps Brachii are going to be, so anterior medial view. It's going to be like this. This is what you're looking at, okay? The triceps are down here, okay? So, where am I? The Triceps Brachii, it's called tricep 3 because it actually has 3 attachment points or 3 heads. And it actually extends the elbow as well as the shoulder. pulls back this way, and it adducts the arm. It brings it in toward the body. Okay? The brachialis is actually involved in flexing your elbow. Epicondyle, that's a bone. The tendon, don't worry about it. Aponeurosis is a tendon, don't worry about it. Now, the pronator teres. Listen to the word pronator. Remember I talked about supination and pronation? This is pronation. It's going to basically put your palm facing downward. So it pronates the forearm and your hand, both, because they're attached to each other. Okay, so pretty much we've talked about almost all of these. The triceps brachii, this is bone, this is bone, this is bone. The deltoid, the pectoralis major, biceps brachii, the brachialis. The brachioradialis, okay, that's the new one in this one, and it has one function. It flexes your elbow. It flexes your arm. That's it. That's all it does. Okay, so that's part one.